There's a difference between do it yourself and do it for a living. At the Home Depot, we get that. And we're here to help pros get the job done with the products and brands you trust. Technology to keep your job on track. Job site delivery to save you time. And bulk pricing on over 4,000 items every day to save you money. When you've got a job, we're on the job. The Home Depot. More saving, more doing.
Welcome back to Mysterious Goings On. So excited to have part 2 of our conversation with authors Eden Baylee and Jason McIntyre, two very good friends of mine, fantastic writers. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. If you didn't catch that, get your butt on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you go, and listen to it, because we're talking about things that we wish readers knew about writers. A lot of it. That seems to be where it's going, but there's some other stuff there, and you're going to want to hear about their takes on the little traps they fall into and tropes they use, and things that we use that are crutches and things like that. So go back and listen to that last episode for that. But this week, we're going to continue the conversation. So hello, Eden.
Hello, Alex.
Hello. And Jason, are you still there?
I'm here.
We were just talking last week about, we talked about, like, as I mentioned in the intro, tropes and traps and things like that, and marketing our work. And I really loved hearing the way both of you approach your readership. You didn't outright say, this is how I approach my readership. But Jason, for example, you put the call out saying, hey, find a mistake, let me know. What do you like about this? What do you not like about this? I'm a little less open to that. Eden, I sense you're not quite. Are you asking for that kind of thing on your blog? Is that what you said last week? That are you asking readers to tell you what they like and don't like, or are you a little more guarded about it, or where were you on that?
I think when it comes to my own individual writing, I'm fine if people comment. I think I've grown a much thicker skin over the years, and so if they find an error in my book, I am happy for them to let me know. And also, I've had discussions with people who send me personal emails saying, I don't like your use of the word. Can I say this word on air, Alex?
Go.
The C word. I don't like that you use the word cunt, because I wrote erotica. So, but I've had those discussions right on my blog. So, it's something that I think it's a learning experience for people. So why not? It's learning for me as well, because I have my reasoning for using particular words, and if a reader doesn't like it, I fully respect it, because they are looking at it from their own point of view, and so then I'll explain why I used it, and maybe we come to some sort of understanding, and that's the best I can hope for.
I love that. It's interesting. I mentioned last week about how, and Jason was very much a part of this, helping revitalize and relaunch my John Pilot mystery series. And one thing we did that Jason did was the new covers. Well, I'm catching mostly just humorous heat about, and Jason's probably rolling his eyes, the Pilot's Key cover. And I just this morning, a dear friend of mine who loves the series, and she emailed me and said, or messaged me and said, I don't think I've read that new John Pilot book, Pilot's Nude Beach. If you haven't seen it, Eden, the new cover it's a scantily clad woman in a string bikini laying on her belly, and she's basically, for all intents and purposes, nude. And the reason Jason and I went that direction was, well, we're chasing commercial business. We're chasing eyeballs here a little bit. And it was a bit of an experiment, because the new series of book covers, there's definitely a through line, and they're definitely consistent style. And for that particular book, which I've defended a million times the past few weeks, that's a very heavy, sandy beach kind of setting in Key West, and there's a lot of sex, and it's a little noir, and so we had some fun with it.
I absolutely love that cover, and I actually meant to ask you about this. Have you had any of the online publishers sort of give you any flack about displaying it?
I thought I might, and I remember, Jason, what did I ask you about this before we did it? Did I ask you?
we were fully expecting some of them to have an issue with it. As far as I know, Alex, you can correct me, but I don't think anybody's flagged it from that point of view.
Nobody's flagged. Well, one thing I will say this: there is a blog, and the name escapes me now, but they do a monthly. If your paperback is below $15, you can list it, and you just list it in the comments. And what they do, they'll go in and you put the name of the book, you put the link to it, and your the author's name. And what they'll do, they'll go back and they'll change the link into a picture of the book cover for you. And they did it. I listed all my books because they're all under 15 on the paperback. And but they did not, and they did not show the Pilot's Key cover. But then I went back and read their thing. They said if it's anything it's of erotica, or if it's anything that might not be safe for work, they said we basically tend towards being very conservative. But that's the only thing. The good thing, besides like I just love the cover, and I mean, I love beautiful women anyway, so I love to look at it. But besides that, is sales are up.
Excellent.
Yeah,
that is good. In terms of getting feedback, like Eden was talking about feedback from a reader in a personal email, and Alex, you're talking about a little bit about people maybe teasing you a little bit about the cover with the beautiful woman on it. I just wanted to mention, I feel like I've been open to receiving feedback, criticism, bad reviews. I don't love them, of course, but do want to make it clear that I probably am not going to change my artistic or creative impulses. If a reader comes to me and says that I have Jason McIntyre book that he or she read did something that reader didn't care for, I'm not going to go and change that. And I'm probably not going to change my approach to doing what I do in the future. I'll probably have a little bird on my shoulder and think about it in a different way, but ultimately it's probably not going to result in, pandering to any degree, really. That's just the way I look at it, though. What do you guys think?
I feel the same way, absolutely. I mean, if we were taking all the negative reviews or all of the feedback that we were getting that disagreed with the way we were writing our books or a character, it would no longer be our stories. It would no longer be our storytelling and our characters and our writing, really. So that's where growing a thick skin really does make you a better writer. You have to sort of stick to your guns. It's like I said, people did not like my use of the word cunt, but I love that word. So I'm going to use it in my writing. And if you don't like it, then you don't read my books. But it's not like I use it, for no reason. There is a purpose for using that word in limited areas of my books. So, I think it's not that I need to defend it, but I think sometimes you have to know your books well enough to say, I get it, you don't like it, for whatever reason, but it's not going to change the way I write. I
love that.
Completely agree.
Yeah. I was thinking about Stephen King again. He comes to mind because, he's ubiquitous, so why not? And I'm a big fan of reading his book on writing, which is a nice tome for writers to read. But I think it was in there, or maybe it was elsewhere, but there was a story about his book, The Dead Zone. He got letters because at the beginning, one of the characters, who is an absolute bastard, kicks a dog to death. And he got letters from people saying, burn in hell, I can't believe you'd write that and all this stuff. And he's like, folks, this is a book about a bad guy. Bad guys do bad things. This is not the church social, and I'm not going to clean up the language, and I'm not going to change these things. Just like Eden, just like you just said. I commit. I did one act of cowardice. I did change something. I will just tell you. In Pilot's Cross, there's a sex scene, and so I put it out there, and I had a reader, somebody I knew, and he said, I think it was gratuitous. There was a certain sex act that I described. And I slept on it for about a week. And then I thought, I think he's right. It doesn't advance the story. And so I went ahead and removed it. And I don't regret it really, because I do think that I was right about it didn't move the story, but on the same token, I guess I was a little cowardly to do that because I thought it was important, and it got through all the way to publication of the book. But then when I did a revised edition, I kind of yanked that section out. I'm not saying I did right or did wrong, but it's interesting to think about that. But yeah, I have some reviews from people who have given me 1-star reviews because it has language in it.
Yeah, and life just isn't fair that way. I mean, some people don't like bad language, then don't read my fucking book. I suppose I can tell them that.
Well,
But,
doesn't it drive you crazy because especially when you're an indie author and I'll say it, every fucking review counts, and then you have some idiot get on the site. I couldn't even finish it because it had the F word.
yeah.
Then I'll refund your money. Move on. Please don't wound the book by giving me a shitty review.
Yeah, and I'm also past that stage where I feel like one bad review is going to tar my reputation or mean that no one's going to buy my book ever, or people are going to stop following me. I'm really past that right now, so I feel like I feel like most readers are smart enough to look at reviews and sort of get a general consensus that, oh, okay, she's got 75 or 80% good reviews, and there's this 2% who really did not like the book. And the reason they didn't like it is because, bad language or whatever. I think most readers have the smarts to say, oh, okay, well, I'm not one of those 2%. I'm the 80%. My math is horrible because that doesn't even equal 100.
Hey, you're all about words, not numbers. We get it.
And so I think it's like when we purchase anything, we sort of go with the majority, okay, we use the reviews or the number of reviews as a guideline. That may not be the only reason that we buy the book, right? But it is a guideline as to, is there some quality to this product? So I think, reviewers, I think some just like to give bad reviews because maybe it gives them some power. Maybe they feel like, this is the only writing maybe that they do. I don't know. They go and write reviews on stuff that they read they don't like. And
yeah.
Well,
I think though I wanted to clarify when I say that. I laugh it off now in a lot of ways, but the point is though that when you could clearly see that and I've had a couple of those on one of my books, it took it down by like a half star. So if there's the people who look and if your book doesn't have 5 stars, they're not even going to consider it. There's a lot of people like that, I know, or 4 stars at least. So it took it down a few notches, which bothers me. So if hopefully they're doing what hopefully with this incredible cover, they are looking down and reading the 1-star reviews. And I got to admit, every now and then it's kind of fun to read the 1-star reviews of any product or book or movie or something, because oftentimes it's but it's often crazy people.
Well, I was going to say, often the 2%, they really call themselves out in there's my Canadian accent. They call themselves out in their own review. I had a review for a book, and I only had 3 or 4 reviews for that book, and one of them was a crazy, and she or he said something, and there was typos. You couldn't really understand the words in the review, but it was something along the lines of, I seem to recall there being an alien in this, 1 star. I'm like, well, you didn't read it because there's no alien in it, and if you read as poorly as you write, then I don't think people will take your review very seriously. That review is still there, by the way, if anybody wants to go look for it. It's hilarious.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's something we laugh at. So I want to say this to the listeners who do write reviews. First of all, thank you. Even if and I've always been one to say, listen, I don't expect a 5-star review for anything, and it's not just my own, humble pie kind of attitude or anything, but I don't want people to freeze up and think, oh gosh, if I don't write him a 5-star review, I just better not write one at all. Now, I'd rather you didn't write me a 1 or 2-star review. 3 stars, okay, I guess. But I would prefer to have the reviews out there so there's proof that people have read it and they can add insights to it and give me some feedback. So those of you who do write reviews, thank you. Those of you who are listening, and you don't even have to write a review of mine or Eden's or Jason's book, but write reviews of books that move you. It's really important to the authors, and especially authors who are not making a shit ton of money, who are clawing and scratching for every reader they can get. It's huge to have a new review. And I do this, Jason, this, what we did on the go-round of book covers, I lifted some of the better Amazon reviews of just regular folks, and I excerpted those on the back cover of all the new paperbacks. And I kind of like doing that. Now, I don't have that just doesn't mean I don't have reviews from like blogs and news sources and stuff like that. I have some of those too, but I kind of like the idea of just pulling off these people who actually took the time to write me a review. So I just wanted to add that there, that reviews are certainly appreciated. I'm pretty sure you guys will agree with me on that.
100%. Reviews always help. They add to the total. And as a reader, not as a writer, but as a reader, when I read a book or watch a movie or anything, I don't even really, delineate what is a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star book or piece of work. I don't know if I'm different that way, but if I like something, it gets the top score for me. If we're talking 5 stars on Amazon, if I enjoyed a book, 5 stars. If I didn't, I don't review it.
Oh.
And that's just the way I do it, and I don't know that I've necessarily talked to anybody else who does it that way. So people will see a ton of 5-star reviews from me. It means I liked it. It means it did something for me. Doesn't mean it was necessarily the best. Sometimes it was. But 5 stars are nothing kind of for me. Sometimes I give it a 4 if it's like pretty good. But, so I guess I break my own rules sometimes.
Wow. I think it's because we're Canadian, Jason. We're just so damn nice. We are so
that's what
nice.
It is. I'm really sorry. I can only give you 4 stars. Yeah, there you go. Apologizing in the review. Oh no, I'm sorry. You go first. No, I'm sorry. You go first.
No. Can I go now? Can I go now, Jason? Thank you so much. No, seriously, we must have gone to the same school of review writing, because I'm very much like you.
That's so.
Yeah, if I read it and I like it, I'll give it 5 star. It's rare that I give a 3-star, and I won't review it if it's really awful. And the main reason is because I know how hard it is as a writer to get a really bad review. And how am I helping this writer by giving them an awful review that's out there in the public? What I would do is actually send a note to the writer personally, if I have their email, and just say, I like the book. However, here are some whatever issues that you may want to deal with, or this is what I think you could improve upon. And perhaps I would only do that if I had a relationship that was amenable to that. If it's not, then I just don't bother to review it. But I think reviews are helpful. Bad reviews are not helpful, so I would tend not to leave one if it's an awful book. And 4 and 5 stars are usually my go-to.
I don't leave bad reviews either. Just want to make clear on that. But I do grade things. I was briefly a college instructor, so maybe that's where I get this. But maybe I should lean that direction because, you'd think as a writer I'd be more understanding and more forgiving of things and not so picky. And maybe I need to work on that. But see, I'm an American, and we're not as polite. Less said about Americans these days, right?
Oh dear. Can I address the elephant in this conversation, though?
I think that's really rude. But
I feel strongly about this. I feel like there are so many poorly written books. I feel like the vast majority of books, both independent and traditionally published, the vast majority are simply not very good. And I think the ratio of good to bad is about the same as it was 10 years ago. There's just more. There are more books. But roughly the same percentage are just not very good. Opinions?
Eden?
Well, I would probably say.
You're being very careful. I love it. My Canadian compadre.
Yeah, I'm thinking that there's just a lot more out there. So maybe it takes a lot more to find the good amongst all the bad. Really so yes, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. There's a lot more bad stuff. I'm thinking there might be a lot more bad stuff out there because we were not flooded with the indie market maybe 10 years ago like we are now. It just was not as accessible. Well, I don't know. That's
so easy to press the publish button now. So easy for anybody who's written something down to just put it out.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately that kind of waters down the good stuff a little bit, and it makes people think that, just because you're an indie writer and you can get your stuff out there, it's like the reputation of vanity presses, it's just not all that great. And, unfortunately, that works against people who do work hard to put out a good product. And whether they're indie or traditional, it's just much harder for an indie writer to do so.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're both right on that. And I compare it to podcasting too. I've always been an early adopter, obviously, on indie publishing, but on podcasting. I started podcasting 2006, I think. Off and on, I've had 3 or 4 different shows, and not that my shows were incredible by any means, as far as production values and things like that. I do my best, but there is now such a plethora of just really crappy podcasts out there, and it's just usually dudes, just verbal diarrhea and not interesting and need an editor and maybe some sound design and maybe edit out, I don't know, half the ums and ahs if they could. Those kinds of things which drive me crazy as a listener. It's really interesting to see that, because I think it's a direct correlation to or maybe not a correlation, but it's a direct it's very similar to what's going on with indie publishing, because I think, yeah, like you both said, it's so easy to publish now. And I get hit up by writers who maybe aren't bad writers, but definitely aren't ready for prime time yet, who want me to read their stuff and give them my notes and things like that. And a few of them, this is what's interesting, is the ones who I give notes to, and there's some notes about real changes. This is how you know the difference between somebody who's really serious about it. If they act kind of put out by your changes, I think they're not in it quite the same way we are. Yeah, but if they do what Eden did, which is offer some sincere, hey, I'm a writer, I've been writing for a long time, I see some things here, I think you might want to work on these things, or just a suggestion kind of thing, and then whether they make the changes or not, the fact that how they receive it is a good indicator, I think. So I think that's right. And I guess the question I have about this part is it ever going to let up? Is it going to be kind of like podcasting? I think, podcasting, I think we're going to see a lot of these shows give up and go away, and we'll get back down to kind of a reasonable number. I'm wondering, do you think indie publishing will just continue to have the same level of output from everybody? Just whoever wants to take that on?
I think it's already falling off. I started back in 2010, 2011. Yep. So, I've been at it now for almost a decade, and I've already seen a lot of the writers whom I either connected with on one forum or another. They no longer have a blog, or they no longer write, or they haven't published in a while. So, I think people either they're in it for the long run, or maybe it was just a hobby, or who knows. I don't know what their motivation was when they started writing. So I think it's what they say, writing is it's not a sprint. What's that saying again? It's not a sprint, it's a
marathon.
So, you have to be in it for a while. It's not like you're going to make your millions immediately, as most people think about writing, if ever. It's something that you want to do because you love it, and it's hard work, and you're going to keep at it because you want to do it. So maybe the cream will rise to the top, and it might take a long time to get there, but that's how I sort of see it. What do you think, Jason?
I agree. I don't see a lot of names in my social media feeds and commenting on blogs and out there in the world. I don't see a lot of the same names I saw 9-10 years ago. There was a lot of people. I don't know if it was a bucket list thing. Like I see those authors. I could write a book, and they go and they do it, and then they realize, well, you have to sell it, and it has to be good, and it has to meet a certain level of quality for readers to keep recommending it to other readers. And maybe they couldn't keep up that pace or that level of quality, or maybe they just simply checked it off their bucket list and said, you know what, I did that. I wrote a book, and one's good enough, and 1 or 2 is good enough, and here I go. I'll do something else. So, yeah, the names that I do see, however, here's the thing. The names that I continue to see on book covers and out on the internet and in the world that I saw in 2009, 2010, 2011, they're actually doing very well. Many of them that have stuck with it are selling books. Many of them are leaving behind their full-time work to make writing their full-time work. That's happened a lot to people that we, the three of us, knew 8, 9, 10 years ago. I think that's fabulous.
I agree. I think it's, I always had to admire the people who started writing because they loved it, but they also held on to a full-time job and then succeeded so much in their writing that they gave up the full-time job, which perhaps they never wanted to be doing anyway, and went on to write full-time. So I think that's a sign of someone who's succeeded and continues to make writing something that's, central to their life. And those are the ones who will stick at it to do better. So I fully agree, Jason. I think that's a great analysis of those who will continue with writing.
Yeah, every time I think I'm done, which does not happen a lot, but there was a couple of times when I thought, this is so much work, and I run my own company during the day and got a family and I've got stuff to do just like everybody else, but I just hear the siren song, I hear the call, and I just want to tell my stories and have that satisfaction, even if I don't sell a ton of books. And I've never sold a ton of books. I've done all right, but it's the satisfaction of knowing that as best I could do, it's a story well told, and I know for a fact it's entertained people. So that's a lot for me, but that's not to say that I wouldn't love it if they got discovered and just, even sold mid-lister level, like my grandpa's stuff that, I may have mentioned previously. He wrote Westerns for 50 years and he made mid-lister money. He couldn't quit his day job, but he made a nice supplement to his life money. So that was nice. Well, I don't want to drag this out too far. I know you've both been so generous to be with me, but I would like to just ask then, all that said, since we're not quitting, right? I assume we're all three going to keep going, right? Yeah?
Right.
Well, I was going to interject and ask you both, have you ever quit, or have you ever, Alex, you've admitted that you've thought of it. Mm-hmm. Have either of you? Because I know that I have come very, very close to quitting at least publishing. I definitely have. Life gets crazy. Family members have challenges, and life changes, and things get bigger and bigger and crazier. And you wake up one day and you say, at least for me, I say, well, I'm always going to be a storyteller. I'm always going to write. But am I going to go through that whole process I described in last week's podcast about the writing process, which is agonizing, and then the editing and honing process, and then the design process, and then the marketing process, and then listening to negative reviews and all the stuff that goes with it? Am I going to do that? I've woken up on days and said I'm not going to do that. Now, I didn't quit, and I hope I never do, but have you guys ever gotten to that point?
I have gotten to the point where I've stopped writing for a while. It's not because I did not want to write. It's because of, different things happening in my life that I could not write, and it was just a struggle and difficult. And I don't want to label it as writer's block or whatever. I mean, you could call it whatever you like. It was just a period where I could not write. I could not read. My mind was just not there. So I think we're all going to go through periods where it's difficult in any of that writing process, which is so long, as you described it, Jason, where we may at one part of it decide I can't do this anymore. So thankfully I'm back on track. I'm writing again. So I definitely do see that light at the end of the tunnel will be always to write and publish. And what happens after the publication is done, I don't know. Maybe it will sell, maybe not, but a lot of it is going to be based on what I do with it afterwards. So I would love to continue the process for as long as I can, because it's what I've made my career doing since I quit banking. So I hope to be able to continue with it.
Well, I hope you do too. And I went through a period, listeners to the show know I won't retread all that, where I was just not well, physically unwell for a better part of a year. And I muddled thinking, just wasn't in good shape, and just couldn't quite get over the hump. Anything I tried to write was just, so I just put it all down and kind of kept the marketing machine going as best I could, but I just wasn't ready. And then I started feeling better, and Jason knows this, and then all of a sudden I'm at the other end of FaceTime with Jason going, okay, I need new covers, and I need this, and I'm going to podcast on a weekly basis. And I'm sure he was thinking, oh my God, cocaine's a wonderful drug, Alex. But no, I'm just kidding about the cocaine.
Sure.
Mostly. But I did. And so my thought now is so I love how healthy Eden, what you just said, what a healthy perspective that is. You're going to write and you're going to publish, and once it's out of your hands, you'll do your best to keep it in front of people, but people are going to pick it up or they're not, and so I like that, and I like the idea of telling myself, you're writing for yourself without rationalizing, but I'm writing for myself, and I want to entertain people, and I will do that. But I find that as long as I tell myself this book you just finished is not a lottery ticket that's going to win necessarily, if it does, great. But to me, the reward can't be monetary at this point. And maybe I'm not thinking about it correctly, but just knowing the way I'm wired, I can't think about this as this one's got to sell. I just can't do that. And Eden, does that make sense to you, or?
No, it absolutely makes sense. I mean, I haven't published a book now in, I think it's been almost 3 years. I've put out different books, novellas, but I haven't actually published in my series, and yet each month I'm still getting royalties. So I'm thinking, well, this isn't a bad thing, to be getting paid, but actually not having published anything new. So perhaps it gives me a little bit of confidence to say that, the stuff that I put out there earlier is still keeping me afloat. And if I were to put out a new book, that would sort of revitalize, some of the old catalog and, maybe gain more readers and the whole bit. And that's the way it is. It's like this machine that you just don't want to, dry up, obviously. But let's try, if I can, to keep it going. And I feel like, once I get out the next book, it makes me happier that I'm, have output. It's certainly not that I think, oh, this is the book that's going to launch me into stardom or wealth or anything. It's just the book that's going to keep me going, and that's as far as I'm going to look.
Right. Jason?
On a tangent to that, I have noticed this about myself. When I'm not writing, when I don't get a daily word count, I'm a beast.
Yeah, you are.
I am not a pleasant man to be around, despite being a Canadian. I'm impolite, and I don't apologize when I need to if I haven't gotten my 2,000 words in a day. It's really true. So whether I sell 1,000 books or one book, I have to keep. I know that I have to keep going to get that book out, and if I don't, I'm a nasty, nasty person.
You're definitely a nasty person. I want to go on record and say that.
Yeah. I'm the least pleasant man that you've ever met. I know it.
Yeah. You should get a endorsement deal for being the least pleasant man alive. I think that would be great.
What could I sell with that?
Well, let's just try books.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I never thought of that. Maybe that's one of my challenges.
I think maybe you should think about it. Okay, I know we've got to wrap this up. I want to ask one more question, and I'll preface this really quick, and I'm going to defer and ask Eden this question first, but I want to say this, and this is not me blowing smoke up anybody's ass to tell you that Eden writes incredibly good stuff. And at first she started in erotica. That's where I first read Eden's work. I read your work, Eden. Here I'm talking to you like you're not here. I'm talking to the readers and listeners and all these people. Okay, I'm going to talk to you now, Eden. I started reading your work when it was your erotica work, and it was some of the finest erotica I've ever read. And I was just so excited about it. And I was telling everybody about it, and I loved it. And you did a series of it, a lot of good books and stories, and I was so impressed and, well, frankly, intimidated. But also, then you switched gears and you jumped over to my side of the street. And you, with your Kate Hampton book, you started with Stranger at Sunset, which, and I've told you this before, Eden, one of the most incredible murder scenes I've ever read. I was so moved by how well that was done and how I was so in the middle of that scene and that book, and I just really, really impressed, and I can't wait to see what happens with the next one. So that said, what are you working on?
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, my heart is like so nice and warm, and I'm sitting on my couch here and I'm feeling like, wow, I've got to push my head back, like it just expanded like to 3 times its size. But I so appreciate your kind words, Alex, because it was really hard to think back to when I was starting to write in erotica, whether it was good, not good, and I never expected actually men to be the main readers of my books for some time. I think there were more men reading my erotica than there were women. So that was always a little bit interesting. But just to answer your question, when I left erotica to move into suspense writing, I always knew that erotica was just sort of a jumping off point for me. I loved the genre, but I knew I wasn't going to be writing it forever. So I'm writing the series. I called it the Stranger series. So the first book was Stranger at Sunset with Kate Hampton, and the second book, which I'm writing on right now, is called A Fragile Truce, which just continues her story. And hopefully that will come out very, very soon. So that's what I'm working on.
Listeners, keep it here, because I know for a fact that my friend Eden will let me know when it's going to come out. Are you going to, if you don't mind, if you don't want to tell me or you haven't thought about it when you get it done, are you going to do a pre-order, do you think, or a launch of some sort?
That would be that'd be the thinking, I think, to do some sort of pre-order, especially for those who've read the first book and want to know about it ahead of time. So, the marketing is for me the last part of it. Right. But yes, I should definitely keep my eye on that.
If you think about it, when you're about 30 days out, let me know, and I'll do some I'll tell my audience about it and get them all fired up about it, and we'll put links everywhere, and I'll go spray paint them on sides of buildings, whatever you need.
Thank you very much.
J Mac, my brother, what are you working on?
Firstly, I have to echo, Alex, what you said about your original erotica work, Eden. I remember I met you first, and we conversed a bit, and you were in the community, and you were very nice and fellow Canadian, and then I went and read your work, and I admit to being a bit hesitant because it was erotica, and I had not read anything like that. I can be perfectly honest. Other than pop fiction that had some intimacy or sex in it, I hadn't really read anything. Yours was my first, Eden. Yours was my first erotica.
I am so honored you did.
Yeah, right. And I was very impressed with the writing, and so I continued to read everything you put out, and then when you switched over to the suspense thriller genre, I think I was even more impressed and less self-conscious to I'm being perfectly honest here. I think I was less self-conscious to read that, even though there was some steam and a little bit in those books. And so I find that interesting, how writers can jump and move from genre to genre, often with fluidity, if they're good writers. And I think you've done that. I think there was a fluidity to how you kind of moved from the erotica that was mainly erotica to some sort of suspense books with some sauciness in them. So it's been good. I'm looking forward to your next Stranger book.
Thank you.
You bet. As for me, I've been writing mostly steadily for the 3 years that I have not been putting much out. I put a couple of novellas out in the last 3 years that mostly finished out the Dovetail Cove series. That's 9 plus a new one. My hope in 2019 is to get the final book, the 10th book, which is a giant book that ties everything together. That's my hope for the fall. It's a standalone book, so you don't have to have read anything else. But if you've read the other ones in the Dovetail Cove world, I think it's going to be pretty satisfying. I hope that's what it'll be for anybody who liked those books. Earlier than that, this spring or early summer, I want to put out an anthology of novellas, and there's 6 new novellas, and several of them are pretty long. So it's going to be probably a 200,000 word count collection of. We got into a debate on Facebook about what's a novella and what's a short novel. I don't really know, but these are satisfying reads. They're fairly lengthy, and there's 6 brand new ones. So I'm hoping that I can get that out and people will enjoy reading those.
Well, I think they will. One thing about Jason's writing is, it just occurred to me, and I haven't really said this, but hopefully we have listeners from all 3 camps on this podcast. I hope Eden's fans are listening, and Jason, your fans, and both of mine. I think that Jason's work, it keeps me coming back for more. The Dovetail Cove concept, this mosaic, these books that you can read in virtually any order. I think you do want to start with the one book, don't you, Jason?
I don't think you have to. Maybe I'm biased, but I think you can start anywhere.
Okay, and I've read most of this stuff, and It's really, it sucks you in. It's really good. And that's the hallmark of both of my guests today, is that there's three things you both have in common, by the way, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. And Eden, I don't know if this sounds ridiculous, you can slap me later, but you both write women so well. And of course, Eden, you are a woman, so maybe it's easier. I have a hard time making my female characters come alive in a way that I want them to. I've written a couple of good ones, but when I read Eden, when I read your stuff about how self-possessed all the women are, and how it's not the usual tropes and things like that. And then Jason, when you write these books where the women have purchase and agency and all these things are happening, I just admire the hell out of you both for that. You both have that going, in my opinion. And the other couple of things are that I think you figure out really well what your audiences want, and you deliver every time. And neither one of you get too self-indulgent, which is easy for us to do. I do a little bit with mine, but I don't see that. You have that going on. And then three, you're just, we've already kind of touched on this, you're both incredibly professional, and not only professional about your own books, but it's a respect for the craft. It's a respect for the independent publishing industry, for lack of a better word. Both of you maintain standards, and we've already touched on people who don't have standards, who can hit the button and publish. But those things, I think you both do so incredibly well. I think you're both really important figures in indie publishing, and I'm proud to have you on the show. It's been my sincere pleasure. I'd hate to stop, but I understand that getting 2 episodes out of both of you, very busy authors, is really pushing it. So I'll roll it up now and just ask you real quick, kind of a lightning round thing. What would you like folks to do? Is there would you want them to go visit your website, or stay tuned? Is there an email list, or anything we can do to kind of make sure that the folks who are just meeting you today don't lose touch with you? Eden?
The easiest way to stay in touch is to go directly to my website, which is also where my blog is. It's edenbaylee.com, EDENBAYLEE.com. And you'll be able to find all of my links from there. Shoot me an email, make a comment on a blog post. Most of the stuff I write about there just has to do with character building. It's not about writing craft per se, although there are some blogs about that as well. But, I'm not going to force you to read like 2,000 words on a blog article. So, let's go and just share some music, or share a little bit of storytelling, and enjoy a few minutes with each other. So yeah, shoot me a note anytime.
And I can tell you, she's totally as cool as she sounds right here on the show. And Eden, I love your travel logs. When you travel, oh my gosh, they're so much fun. I really enjoy that. So Jason, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, I just get jealous of Eden when she's posting all of those great pictures and the great food and the scenery, and I'm just like, oh, she's got to take me next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah. Folks can find me at thefarthestreaches.com. I could spell it, but I think everybody here is a great reader and writer, so I think you can find it. Otherwise, do an internet web search for me, Jason McIntyre, and you'll find me on Facebook, and you'll find me on Twitter. And you'll learn about all the crazy things my wife and my kids say that I post about. So, and hopefully some new books in 2019 as well.
Oh, fantastic. Folks, if you're a regular listener to this show, you know what I'm working on, so I'll spare you all that. Just if you're not sure, just run it back a couple episodes, or just tune in next week. Our guests have been these wonderful Canadian, I don't even say Canadian very much because, hey, writing is writing, but they are from Canada, and they're lovely people. Canadian authors, Eden Baylee and Jason McIntyre, my dear friends, and I've enjoyed having you both. You listeners, I appreciate you listening in. If you have comments or questions, the Facebook page is a great place to put a comment or a question. If you have a question for Jason or Eden, of course, you know how to get a hold of them as well. But until next time, keep reading.
Napa know-how.
It's Love Your Car Month at Napa. And to show your car the love, get a Napa bucket for $2.99 and save 20% on almost everything you can fit inside, like car wash, car wax, and tire shine. So save some cash and look good doing it by getting 20% off with the Napa Bucket. Quality parts, helpful people. That's Napa Know-How.
Napa know-how.
At participating Napa Auto Parts stores, exclusions apply. Minimum 3 items may not be combined with other offers. Offer ends 4/30/19.
Don't miss today's Saturday steal at Old Navy. Dresses just $8 for women, $6 for girls. Plus, today's the last day to get women's and girls' tanks for $2 and men's polos for $5 at Old Navy and OldNavy.com. Valid 4/20. Select styles only. Limit 5 tanks.